welcome to another cross-border talk where we are moving our attention to the Balkan route of migrants towards the European Union. There have been plenty of investigations and grave cases of abuse over that Balkan route. We are now joined by Maria Cheresheva, who is a freelance Bulgarian journalist focused on migration issue. She has collaborated with different media, Bulgarian and international, and she is also member of the Association of European Journalists in Bulgaria. Maria Cheresheva did a number of investigations over the last year and more that dealt with cases of abuse, with cases when people were shot at the border, presumably or allegedly by Bulgarian authorities, with cases where people were dying literally while trying to cross the border or pass Bulgarian territory. So she has a lot of experience, and she's now invited to comment on her discoveries. First of all, Maria, could we start with this question to ask you to make some kind of a sum up of the most important findings of your investigations over the last more than a year?
I would thank you, Vladimir. Actually, I've been investigating this topic for more than 10 years. It's just that those investigations from the last 2 years kind of grabbed more international attention. Otherwise, I'm afraid that this is not a problem from yesterday, and it's been ongoing since the refugee crisis started as a result of the war in Syria, and after that, with events in Afghanistan and continuous instability in the Middle Eastern region. So we've been witnessing more and more securitization of the European borders over the 10 years. And as external border, of course, Bulgaria is expected more and more to protect the European Union from people entering. And I'm afraid that our investigations have found that sometimes this is done at any cost. Uh, with our collaborations with Lighthouse Reports, which is International Investigative Collective, in the end of 2002, we were looking for so-called black sites. Those are places where asylum seekers are being kept without being allowed to register or to seek asylum. And instead of that, they are pushed back from where they came from. In the Bulgarian case, most of these cases are from Turkey, because most of the people cross the Bulgarian-Turkish border. Very few might. I've seen data about people being pushed back to Greece, but those are just a tiny number of cases. So what we encountered was I could say like data for a systematic pushbacks and violence, and we caught on camera how people are being kept in a cage-like structure inside the territory of one of the border police stations close to the Turkish border, and then sent back to Turkey. This is a typical black site, basically a place where no law is being respected or applied. And throughout this investigation, we also encountered the case of a person who, during a situation of tension at the Bulgarian-Turkish border, with people protesting uh, at at the border fence, was shot. We did a forensic investigation into the direction and the origin of the shot with expert former FBI like official who gave us the reason to claim that the bullet was shot from the Bulgarian side, where in the video evidence that we got, you could see that border police was allocated. But in this case, the Bulgarian authorities rejected uh, any of these allegations. On the case of the cage-like structure, currently the prosecution is conducting an investigation into this practice, and hopefully we will see somebody being sanctioned for this, because we pretty much saw it with our own eyes. And our last investigation is a topic that is being, like, currently more and more organizations are starting to talk about it, which I believe is kind of good news. It's about the people who die on the Balkan route, which is one of the most popular ones right now. Maybe not right now in winter, but in the summer definitely. And with people um, um, people hiding and trying to cross without being noticed. Unfortunately, some of them uh, die because of exhaustion, because of different diseases. They have no ways to seek help because they are afraid of being pushed back, and their families are left in a limbo, like just looking for their beloved ones who disappeared at some point on this route. And unfortunately, we have evidence that around 100 persons have died on Bulgarian soil throughout the last 2 years. But this is only the cases that we managed to fact check. I'm afraid that probably lying in the forests of the Stranja mountain, there are many, many more. That's it in a nutshell.
On the basis of your continuous investigations and studies of the issue, how is this Balkan route, the situation of this Balkan route and of the migrants on it evolving over the time? Is it getting worse? What type of people pass this Balkan route? Who are the traffickers? Um, and generally, how the overall situation evolves in the last years.
The situation is very dynamic, and it has changed drastically throughout the years. In the beginning of the refugee crisis in 2013 and 2014, um, big groups of people were allowed to enter Bulgaria because the country was completely unprepared for a big migrant influx, and people were sent into open reception centers and more or less could seek asylum in Bulgaria or continue their route uh, to the Western countries where basically they are heading to. But uh, throughout the last 10 years, also as a result of European policies and processes that are happening in the European Union, the security has been the focus. So we have a fence along the Bulgarian-Turkish border, which is not very effective actually. It has been proven a number of times that it can be crossed very easily, especially with the help of smugglers. But there are, I would say, very, very reasonable allegation for massive pushbacks and aggression towards people that have entered into Bulgaria through illegal routes. And here we have to say that there are no legal routes. I mean, you need to have a visa or some kind of official document that, in places like Syria and Afghanistan, it's almost impossible to possess such type of a document. And although people are redirected to the official border checkpoints, in reality, neither the Turkish authorities nor the Bulgarian authorities would allow people to seek asylum at official border checkpoint. So unfortunately, most of the people choose to do it illegally, trying to cross themselves or more often trying to cross with smugglers that are packing, like there are many ways. One way is on foot, and then people are being transported inside Europe, or by people being hidden in trucks, in cars, in different vehicles, which unfortunately over the last years have led to many deaths. You probably remember the case of December 2022 when 18 Afghans, including a child, died from suffocation in a truck on Bulgarian territory because after being abandoned by smugglers. So, unfortunately, my impression and the impression of our colleagues is that this route is getting more and more dangerous.
Not long ago, the Austrian Ministry of Interior was claiming that Bulgaria and Romania can't be admitted into Schengen zone because of the irregular migration question. Right now, both countries were accepted into partial Schengen, air Schengen, and one of the conditions was that the controls would be tightened on the mutual border and the Syrian and Afghani migrants would be taken into Bulgaria and Romania. I am wondering how does this solution affect the plight of refugees, both those people who walk the Balkan route and those who would be apparently sent to Romania and Bulgaria to be hosted there. I am wondering if this move that was met with mixed reactions with Bulgaria and Romania won't be another development that makes the Balkan route even more risky, even more marked by pushbacks and border violence. What do you think?
First of all, I would say that the Austrian government is using this topic for political benefits because of the forthcoming elections in the country. We had very I would say absurd situations when we had the leaders of the country visiting Bulgaria and suggesting that a concrete wall should be built on the Bulgarian-Turkish border. It's several hundred kilometers long, so you can imagine what would that look like, and also it would be absolutely complicated and expensive to execute such a project. So the Bulgarian border has been topic of like political chit chat of European politicians for and Austrian politicians for quite a while. Of course, the migration condition would be used for further negotiation about Schengen. And what I'm witnessing is that also the European institutions who are supporting Bulgaria and Romania's bid for Schengen, and I would say that this is absolutely fair because there are many other countries that have migration problems, but they are in Schengen, such as Italy, Greece, Spain. I mean, this is a geographical problem. It's not a problem of like that we can 100% regulate migration. So this is used to twist the hands uh, of the Bulgarian government, but also of the European authorities. And unfortunately, what we don't see in these negotiations is the human rights aspect. Like because generally the European Union lays on certain principles that have to be respected, and human respect of human rights and dignity is among the first ones. But in in the Schengen negotiations and the whole monitoring processes, the human rights violations that journalists, non-governmental organizations, and very few politicians have been talking about are not taken into consideration at all. So I'm not very positive that these processes would bring more fair treatment of human beings, after all, because we're talking about humans.
In Poland, where the migrant humanitarian crisis on the Belarusian border has been also going on for more than 2 years, people also died in the border zone. People were also pushed back to Belarus. People were also refused any kind of registration or any kind of chance to present their story to ask for asylum. And seeing the photos of anonymous graves in your publications, reading about people who were trying to find out what happened to their family members in the border, I was also thinking about the situation in Poland. And then it came to my mind that in my country there has been also a whole movement of humanitarian activists supporting people in the forest on the border with food, with warm clothing. There were even doctors engaged offering basic medical help. I would like to ask, does the same happen on the Balkan route, or hardly anyone cares about the migrants.
Unfortunately, this is not happening on the Balkan route. It was happening in the beginning of the crisis, where the like wanting to help was not criminalized. But I'm afraid that Bulgaria is following the example of Greece, where basically activists, volunteers, and human rights groups have been pushed away from border areas and from areas such as, for example, the Moria camp, as you know, in Lesbos. So in Bulgaria, we are implementing the best practices. I mean, in quotation marks, from other countries where it's very very risky to actually to uh, enter these areas and to try to help. So there are a few collectives of some of them are even not Bulgarian citizens, and a few NGOs that are trying to provide help on the border, but uh, the border authorities would not allow people and activists just to roam around the border forest and to help people in distress. This is a question that remains unresolved, and I believe that bigger humanitarian organizations should intervene in these areas because otherwise people are just left to die inside the forest. And people who are trying to help them are at risk of being accused of smuggling.
I think the most important message of today's cross border talk is that the migrants, the people on the way, people looking for better life in Europe are first of all human beings. And this is something we must never forget. And unfortunately, when looking at the policies implemented in different border countries of European Union, we may have the impression that actually everybody forgets that. Everybody in power speaks about security, about tightening border controls, and not allowing unauthorized people to cross into Europe. And at the same time, we are talking about human beings. We are talking about people like me and you. We are talking also about people, and I think also it's important to remember that, who have no open legal ways to come into Europe. I am sure that if people had the choice between crossing the forests and mountains and risking the violence of the border police and coming here with a visa in a legal procedure, they would have never wondered what is the best choice. It would be obvious, but they don't have this possibility. Thank you very much for your attention. Maria Cheresheva was the guest of today's cross border talk. We encourage you to find and read also other Maria's pieces available online, as she is a very experienced journalist working on such issues as migration and human rights. And also, I would like to ask you not to forget to subscribe to Cross Border Talks so that you don't miss any episode either on YouTube or on SoundCloud or other social media platforms. Thank you for being with us and see you again.